Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm obviously not Gary. I'm sitting in today for Gary Leland. Very appreciative for the opportunity. I'm Teresa Martin, and my business is called flipcatconsulting.com, but I'm also technically a boomer, and that's why the show's called Bitcoin Boomer Show, because Gary is a boomer. But the show is not only for boomers. The show is for anyone who wants to learn more about Bitcoin. It's why we exist. We want to share the concepts, the people, the businesses, the opportunities, and the ideas around Bitcoin so that you can learn more and increase and expand your journey into Bitcoin. Today we're going to meet a company called Yopaki. Their website is Yopaki, YOPAKI.com, and they are based out of Mexico. So this is a Bitcoin company, it's a startup, and they're in Mexico City. Stephanie, what do you think about that name, Yopaki?
It's very unique. I don't think I've ever come across it. So I'd be really curious about the story behind it, Yopaki.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, pack what? But I don't think that's it. It's just my brain.
That's true. We'll have to ask them about that. The two gentlemen we'll be speaking with today are Francisco Chavarria, he is the CEO, and Carlos Chida, he is the CTO. And they met in Austin, where a lot of Bitcoiners get together and meet up and sometimes, I guess, form businesses like these two have done. And we'll learn, we'll ask them, what's the origin on Yopaki? We'll talk a little bit about Loteria, which is a very popular game in Mexico. It's very historic. It goes back many years. I think they'll tell us a little bit about that. But it has a connection to how they're using their business, Yopaki, to educate people in Mexico and I guess elsewhere who want to just learn more about Bitcoin. If you would like to learn more about Bitcoin, one place I would suggest is Gary's website, bitblockboom.com/books. Now, of course, you'll find Gary's recent book, Bitcoin and the American Dream. He was a co-author on that with several other Bitcoiners. But that webpage, bitblockboom.com/books, is a great place to find resources and connect with other ideas just to increase your learning, as I mentioned earlier. But you can also look at BitBlockBoom to see what's coming up in April. So we hope you'll enjoy joining us in April for BitBlockBoom, April 3rd through the 6th. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Yopaki. I'm Teresa. We'll talk in a moment. Hi, I'm Teresa with the Bitcoin Boomer Show, and today I'm excited to introduce you to some friends of mine from a company called Yopaki. This is not just any company, it is a Bitcoin company, and in fact, it's an international company. So here to tell you more will be Francisco Chavarria, who is the CEO, and Carlos Chida, who is the CTO. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to see you.
Hi, Teresa. Good morning.
How are you?
Hi, Teresa. Good. Pretty excited to share.
All right. So, Francisco, let's start with you. Let me know where you are and a little bit about your background, what your professional background is, and what brought you into Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely. So, my name is Francisco Chavarria. Currently, I'm in Austin, Texas, which a lot consider to be the mecca of Bitcoin building. And I was originally born in Guadalajara, grew up in Mexico City, and have been living in the States for the last 15 plus years. One of the reasons I moved to Austin was to build in Bitcoin, but prior to Bitcoin, I did have a pretty extensive experience helping startups develop go-to-market strategies. Specifically, I did that in the marketing analytics, social media listening, marketing technology, payment card industry, and even the corporate social responsibility. One of the first countries where I made those contributions was Mexico, because that's where I had my roots. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I held different positions to grow the territory into more than 12 countries in Latin America.
Wow. That's great. And how did you come across Bitcoin? How did you get into Bitcoin?
So I love this question I know Carlos has heard it multiple times, but I love sharing this because most of us in this space of a certain age group are trying to convince our parents, our uncles, even our grandparents to get into Bitcoin. But my case is very peculiar because it was actually the other way around. It was my father, a boomer, who in 2012 started telling me, son, I want to talk to you about something I've been reading about. It's a cypherpunk movement. And my dad's been a libertarian for a long time. But he started introducing the concepts and straight up said, there's this thing called Bitcoin, and I would love for you to do some research and help me out. So my first reaction was, Dad, please just stop. It sounds like a scam. Don't pay attention. Don't waste your time. And patiently enough, 6 months later, towards the end of 2012, he still said, hey, have you looked into it? Same pushback, right? Just Dad, please just don't waste your time on things like that. A whole year went by. So this is now 2013. And at this point, he said, you know what, that's fine. So it seems that you are not going to do this, but can you at least do me a favor? Help me buy some. And as a bonus, I would just suggest, please watch a little bit of this guy. His name is Max Kaiser. We all know and love. Give him a shot. He has a different style, but he's intellectual. He understands finance. He understands history. Just watch it. As an invite, he also said, so help me buy a little, and maybe you should buy a little bit too. So I did. And when I say a little, I really mean a little. Following up that little purchase, I watched Max Kaiser, and I would say within the first 15 minutes, I was, if not hooked, I was intrigued. And from that point on, everything else changed. My life changed. The interest of wanting to learn. And I think every Bitcoiner goes through this journey at different stages, whether it's pre-halving, post-halving, getting wrecked, playing with alternative coins and whatnot. But I'm really grateful that it was my dad, my boomer dad, who introduced me to Bitcoin.
That's great.
And I love it. That was how I got into Bitcoin.
Carlos, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into Bitcoin.
I was born and raised in Acapulco, Mexico, which is where I am, exactly in my room, one of the perks of bootstrapping. This is the room at my parents' place where I used to live. I studied actuarial science, which is maths for insurance and finance here in Mexico. Then I went on to Switzerland to study quantitative finance, and I realized I didn't like it. I couldn't cope with the fantastic economical assumptions that they made. The maths were great, but the rest was just, let's say it was not ideal, to say the least. I switched to computer science. I started working, but I always wanted to do something in Bitcoin, and it wasn't until very recently that I came back from Europe that I started working on Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin somehow because my dad has always been sort of orange pilled. He doesn't know the real the economic terms or the legal terms, but he's always disliked the fact that your money gets taken and some guy that someone chose, not you exactly, decides whom to give it to. So I've always been on that side. And then when I started learning about Bitcoin from the economical perspective, I said, okay, this is exactly what we need. And I started talking with everyone around me, and everyone said, okay, Carlos, you're just delusional. You're just crazy. But on this magic place, the internet, I found my internet friends. And I realized that I was not that crazy, that some other people thought exactly like I did. And that's how I got into Bitcoin.
Oh, that's great. So in a nutshell, tell me how you guys came to meet and decide to work together.
Mm-hmm. That's the magic of Austin. And we like sharing this story too, because we're both Mexican born. We have both had a journey living outside of our country, our home country. And ironically, we met because of connections here in Austin. So that was pretty rare. When we connected the first time we spoke, I feel like there was a synchrony of ideology, not just from the Bitcoin ethos, but from the building standpoint, where we had both been curious about starting something and our skill set just matched. And again, that is because of the connections here in Austin, Texas.
That's great. Carlos, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I remember this common friend of ours whose name you know it, but he doesn't like being mentioned a lot in public spaces. Yep. But I remember that he wrote me an email and he said, "Hey, I know this Mexican here in Austin." I was like, "Oh, really? You know a Mexican in Austin? For real?" Like, no, wait a second. He's a Bitcoiner. He wants to start a company. He is looking for someone to co-found it with. You should talk with him. I was like, all right. Yeah. Ever since we kept the contact, we ramped up really slowly because, I was working somewhere else. Francisco was also doing somewhere else. And then we had to bootstrap, which of course meant that we needed to go really slowly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How long after you two had that initial meeting did you come up with a business concept and decide, yes, we two want to work together and move forward with this?
This is a really interesting question because I think that the first conversation, we knew it was we're going to work together, but that has evolved and we have had pivots throughout maybe the last, I think we're coming on year and a half, if not a little bit more. Those pivots have come from feedback within the ecosystem. From now, we've had the opportunity to talk to venture capitalists within the space. So we have had feedback in terms of that. And the vision has always been to orange pill and to make Bitcoin as simple as possible for people, not just in Mexico, but the United States and the rest. We obviously had to start somewhere, and for us, it made sense to start with Mexico. What has changed really has been the steps and the phases of how to really get into it, to the point that now we have even integrated a cultural aspect to our company and our application and technology.
And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but I wanted to first, get to know each of you and how you got into Bitcoin. In our next segment, I want to dive more deeply into the business of Yopaki, your startup experience, and what your goals were when you got started, what you're thinking about how those may have changed, and some of the activities that you've put together on behalf of your business, Bitcoiners, and Mexican citizens. So we'll be back in just a minute. We're going to take a short break for our sponsors of the Bitcoin Boomer Show. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back. We are here with the gentlemen of Yopaki, Francisco and Carlos. And before we talk about the company of Yopaki, guys, I've got a question for you. And one of you is going to get a little bit of time benefit because you're going to get to hear it. But Gary likes to ask this question of each of his guests. Ready? What is Bitcoin?
Let's see it. Yeah, you're right. Someone will get the benefit.
Yeah.
I can give it a shot, and then Carlos can be the technical and philosophical too. I think it's funny because Bitcoin can be a meme. It can be a passion. It could be a business. It can be a money. For me personally, it has been the most life-changing asset, whether it's monetary or philosophically speaking, thing I've ever come across. I've always been inclined to study and to understand history and finance, but Bitcoin has brought so many other layers to that. And it has also allowed me to connect with like-minded people, which, once again, if I'm surrounded by smarter people than myself, I believe that it only helps me grow as an individual, as a business owner, as a father, as a friend, as an example to people within the organization. So I know it's vague, but this is a great question by Gary. Next time I see him, I'll have to tell him it's not as simple as Bitcoin is X, right? Or XYZ.
Carlos?
Well, I don't know. I usually say that it's just magic internet money, which sounds a bit like a joke, but it really is. The problem is that I cannot I cannot tell my parents just that, because they say you and your Bitcoins, so that they don't exist. But it's the one chance that we've got, at least in our lifetimes and probably many more, to take back what sovereignty means. It's really difficult otherwise. Just go back to the history of money. We cannot go back to gold, because right now I have the everyday need to transfer money from here to Mexico City, to the US, to Europe, to wherever it is. And with gold, we cannot do it unless we end up in the same situation we are at the moment, which is trusting intermediaries that just bring paper money again. So, in one sentence, yeah, it's the money that will allow us to be sovereign and responsible again.
I like that. Well, how does that influence your company, Yopaki? So help the audience understand, first of all, where the name came from, because it is a little unusual, and what your goals were for building the business, and then kind of where you are now. What did you say, like a year, almost 2 years hence, how your pivots have influenced your perspective on what those goals were and what they should be?
Yes, the name itself plays off of an ancient tongue, an ancient language spoken in the territory of Mexico, specifically the Aztec region, or Mexicas, which is Nahuatl. And there's a lot of words that we use in our everyday language that come from Nahuatl itself, like avocado, aguacate, chocolate itself is a Nahuatl word. It was with the original is chocolatl. So taking those roots from the country, Yopaki, we had to play around a little bit with the way it's written, but the true meaning of the word itself is the essence of finding happiness. We see this as a journey when it comes to Bitcoin, to not just helping an entire country, but to understanding and having bigger purpose in just opportunity, which is something that has been taken away because of the current situation in banking systems and whatnot. And then if you want to add anything to that, Carlos, I mean, go ahead. But that's where the name comes from. And the vision we can talk about more. You go ahead.
Is that really the story? I thought you just liked how it sounded.
2 for 1.
No. I had already heard it, and for me, it's you can stand behind any name at the end of the day that represents your values. I like the name. At the beginning it was just to write. Ever since I like it even more. But and it's also a really fun word to pronounce in both English and Spanish.
Uniqueness to it, which is a benefit when you're trying to promote something brand new, especially to a new audience. So what is at the heart of Yopaki? What is its purpose, and whom does it serve?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if we were to explain it in the most simple term, Yopaki is a Bitcoin neobank. And sometimes the question comes up, what is exactly a neobank? Well, there's layers to that. If we had to just write it down in those layers, obviously the first layer would be the offering and the ability to buy and sell Bitcoin. As of today, there is not a company or an exchange that is Bitcoin only focused in Mexico. There are options for customers and users to buy Bitcoin, but they also get exposed to everything else. And at the end of the day, it becomes confusing, frustrating, noisy, and the people that have tested those applications or technologies over the years have gotten disenchanted and have lost money. So one of the things that we wanted to focus on was specifically Bitcoin only. That's layer 1. Layer 2, which of course there's still work that we need to do and we're currently doing on the back end, is offering that neobank experience, which means our customers can use Yopaki to have checking accounts, saving accounts, a debit card attached to the app. And that way, type of transaction, they can sell or buy from the application, and they can also use live. As a layer 3, and again, that's more of a roadmap situation, offering financial instruments. Now, it is true that we're trying to get away from the traditional system or legacy system. Having said that, it takes time, especially for a certain generation of users and investors in the country. And in Mexico specifically, there has been a really good return on investment on Mexican T-bills. So that's something that we have explored. We've talked about offering additional layers. Instead of just saying, hey, Bitcoin's the future, look at the price, buy some, and put your entire assets into Bitcoin. There needs to be steps into doing that. As a side note, one of the things we've noticed, and if Carlos, you want to jump in too, please feel free to do so. But as a side note, we believe that there's very few countries in the world that are as connected and attached to its culture as Mexico.
True.
So we're adding a layer of culture into that, which we can dive deeper into.
Yeah, Carlos, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the cultural aspect is I think the most important one, because it's no secret that there are already places where you can buy and sell Bitcoin while residing in Mexico. But we believe that the message is not complete because at the time people see them as meme coins, and the UX of Bitcoin is really complicated. It's a challenge for every developer to transmit what it's really happening in the screen to an end user. Everything is challenging in Bitcoin, not so much in this other, I don't want to say the word, but let's say not so nice coins, because everything is centralized. And at the end, most of them are a scam, if not all of them. But anyways, my point being is that the cultural aspect is missing. And this is something that I'd like to discuss with people, particularly from the US. So in the main value propositions of Bitcoin, we keep hearing the drill, right? Inflation hedge, privacy, banking the unbanked. That just doesn't apply that well in Mexico. How am I going to explain a boomer that lived through the 80s and 70s in Mexico, where we had inflation of 1,200%, that, look, this thing that you cannot touch, it's going to be your hedge against inflation? It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
That's a very good point.
Because they have a business.
And we'll come back to that in a minute, because I do want to touch on the cultural side, but I'd like to hear how you explain that to some of those difficult audiences. We'll cover that in the next segment. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining the Bitcoin Boomer Show today. Again, our guests are with Yopaki, Francisco Chavarria, and Carlos Chida. Gentlemen, following up on our last conversation about bringing culture in order to reach some of those people in our conversations about Bitcoin, wherever we may be, we sometimes have to find an on-ramp or a bridge. And I think one of those that you have latched onto is with the game of Loteria. So I'm familiar because I spent time in San Antonio as well as the south of Texas when I was growing up. I've been exposed to the game of Loteria, and I think Americans would consider it somewhat similar to bingo, in that you have a card, a placard maybe that's large and has different icons on it, like the symbols that are being shown now. And then the game is played and you get to win if you fill your card. But Francisco, why don't you explain to me, or actually explain to our audience, actually how Loteria works, and then the tie-in to Yopaki.
Definitely. So for the audience listening, I think Teresa did a really good job explaining the closest thing to it would be bingo. But the game itself, Loteria, is actually a game that has been played for centuries. Mm-hmm. We go back all the way to the 14th century, where only the elites in Italy played it. There's traces of different symbols and images. Eventually, it transferred to different parts of Western Europe, mainly Spain. And this is important because, as we know, eventually Spain conquered the territory of the Americas. So when they bring this game over, they still play it. And again, it's still only played by the elites. In the 1800s, then Mexican independence happens. It's still being played by the elites. Fast forward a couple of generations, and as of today, the industries that have really benefited from the loteria are retail. The military used it for the soldiers to entertain themselves. At one point, the Catholic Church used it as well to help educate and to teach concepts of Christianity, symbology, etc. When it really took off was during the Revolutionary War, when soldiers had this game. They played it amongst themselves. When they came back home, they shared it with their families, and at that point, it started spreading through, festivals and congregations and whatnot. Then, to kind of wrap it up into the retail, in the 1950s, 1960s, a cannery called Saint Jacques, which is the equivalent of maybe Del Monte or one of those big cannery goods, started using some of their products into the loteria. Mm-hmm. And over generations, it has been used again for multiple purposes. I would say, and I don't like to use 100% certainty, but I would say 99.99% of the population in Mexico knows what this game is, has played it, and will continue to play it in one way or form. So attaching it to Bitcoin, we believe it's time to give it a Bitcoin treatment. And it's not just the hard concepts, right? We're using memes, we're using characters, for example, a Max Kaiser, we're using Ray Liotta for the laser eyes. But we're also using concepts like the Lightning Network. We talk about the Bitcoin white paper and such. There's 54 cards total in the board or in the game. The way we play it and the way we present it to our users, once a week, every player gets a unique board to the user, and the cards get drawn every 12 hours. If there's a card that matches what's in the board, we award free sats. Now, those sats can stack by referring people. And of course, if you accumulate rows or columns, there's additional sats to be had. The big drum roll here is for whoever wins the entire Loteria board or the bingo will get a full Bitcoin. So we're hoping to get millions of users so that statistically at some point, someone's going to win a whole Bitcoin. So and when that happens, that person needs to yell.
Yeah, so in essence, you've kind of gamified the education side to help onboard people with something that they're really familiar with.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Great.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I
love it. So tell us about your startup journey. What are some of the experiences that each of you have had, pro and con? And if you can I want to capture several of these in this segment, just kind of keep it high and tight, but touch on what's been good, what you've had to learn from, maybe one or two tips.
I'll go first then, or you want to go, Carlos?
Have you seen the? Yeah, sorry, I think there's a bit of delay. But have you seen HBO Silicon Valley?
Yes.
I think it's a documentary. It's not a series, it's a documentary. Yes. No, well, not that dramatic. But the things that are really complicated about the startup are all this legal stuff. Because, of course, you want to do things the right way, but it's difficult to understand what the right way is according to any government, either be it the US or the Mexican government. It's not easy. Then there is a certain lingo for startups and VCs, like the thin change of definition between a pre-seed or a seed round or a Series A. That all of them, if you look them from outside, it just seems scary because they are just so similar. And other than that, of course, it's creating the routine of reading about how to improve in every single aspect, because all of a sudden it's different just from having a job. This is not my first entrepreneurship, but the first one in that I go only with one partner. in tech, everything you want it to be perfect. So you need to start balancing what should be perfect and what is good enough. And finally, pivoting, adapting to the circumstances, in which I believe Francisco has better words to say, as he did in the startup day in Mexico City last Friday.
Yeah, I like to add to that a little bit of again, it's a follow-up, but so myself, I've also been involved in different entrepreneurial adventures. I've been selling candy or toys since I was in elementary school, but not at this level, right? The startup tech world is a completely different animal. And I knew it would be hard. I thought I had read enough books and had heard the right podcasts, but nothing can prepare you for what's in front of you, all the many challenges and circumstances that potentially push you away or could potentially destroy the vision or the dream of building a business, specifically in Bitcoin. So I would say that having that added layer of being a Bitcoin startup is, again, it's more difficult than just starting a regular tech company or a SaaS platform. We have to go through different regulations that not even the regulators know what's going to change today or in 6 months. And in our case, we're dealing with different jurisdictions. So we have 2 different countries and 2 different sets of regulatory pressure that we have to deal with. And, Carlos and I play the roles of CMO, CFO, CEO, treasurer, social media manager on a daily basis. And sometimes we switch and swap. So all the feedback we receive from our friends and allies is very, very well received.
That's really good, because I know you guys have been very focused and you've had your ups and downs, as do many startups. But as you mentioned, it is rather unique in the Bitcoin space, simply because I think part of it, I should say, you're starting out something new. And Bitcoin is relatively new. It only started with the white paper in 2008. So in the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin hasn't been around that long. And Bitcoin companies are also young and, as you mentioned, have to navigate those regulations and things that are kind of unique to this space. So appreciate your sharing your experience. When we come back, we're going to dive into a recent event that Yopaki helped produce in Mexico City just this past weekend. So we'll tell you more about that, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're watching The Bitcoin Boomer Show. Hi, I'm Teresa, and you are listening to The Bitcoin Boomer Show. We're back with Yopaki, and I wanted to talk just a little bit more about your startup journey and then what happened in Mexico City recently. So your business, your startup of Yopaki, is almost 2 years old. You got started working in Austin with some of the folks at Pleb Lab. Those are friends of ours. pleblab.dev is their website, in case you want to check them out. And you are also participating in the Pleb Lab Accelerator. So that exposes you to a lot of different people, opportunities, networking, and so on. And you participated in their event last spring, Top Builder, which was a competition among Bitcoin developers, startup companies, putting their projects forth, hacking them over a period of 8 weeks, and then having a live competition among the five finalists there in Austin in March. And you were the winners of that, am I right?
That's correct. Yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience.
So how has life been since that opportunity in March? And then we'll talk about Mexico City, because you kind of changed roles a little bit this past weekend. How was that experience coming from March?
Yeah, it was a catapult, to be honest, Teresa. And I know we've talked about it, offline, but again, to share to the audience, those weeks of competition were different from a traditional hackathon, where normally there's a conference or there's an event And over the weekend, different teams come in and they either work on something new or something they've been working on. And whoever makes the most progress into the coding and design and showmanship of the service product wins. In our case, we had a total from those 8 weeks plus the finals, 3 months of building where we were being mentored by friends of PlebLab, friends of Wolf, and other allies in the ecosystem, where we had deliveries and we had updates every week in terms of marketing, in terms of development, in terms of communication, what's working, what's not working, why is it working, what did we not finish, and why didn't we finish that? And it all developed into this awesome competition that culminated here in Austin, Texas. I think that the one takeaway I have from that event is the power of networking. We had already been connected to a good number of people, but after that, we were featured on CNBC, and we started getting messages from people that we had not accessed prior to winning the competition. So it was pretty special, and it did accelerate our pressure to deliver the things we've been saying we're building.
So to both of you, this next part, what I observed, here you are, a startup. You've done some of this before in the past, as you've mentioned, but you're a startup in the Bitcoin space. You're struggling to kind of gain your footing and move ahead and create what you have a vision for. And yet this past weekend, you hosted your second annual Bitcoin block party in Mexico City, featuring a Startup Day collaboration with PlebLab, where you were pretty much the host. So the tables were kind of turned. I know, Francisco, you got to keynote, but I think it would be interesting to hear your perspective on the other startups that presented and what's happening in the Bitcoin community currently.
Yeah, one thing I noticed from and I'll be quick so you can jump in after me, Carlos. But one thing I did notice from some of the teams that presented, a number of them had also participated in Intel Builder back in March. And to see the progress they've made in terms of their offering, in terms of the confidence of presenting in front of a crowd, and just the excitement of sticking with it and not dying and adapting, which was part of the keynote, to me it was a testament to again, friends at PlebLab, to Austin, and to the startup builder, I guess, feeling of I'm not gonna give up because this is what I'm passionate about: starting a business and focusing on Bitcoin. So to me, that was a huge takeaway. I was really impressed with every presentation and the collaboration between multiple teams that now are helping each other.
Carlos?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I would love people to see in Mexico. I'm so glad that this event happened in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I want everyone in Mexico to see how really well-intended people are that resilient, that persistent, and so passionate about improving the conditions in which we live, being just purely monetary, being just a purchase, sale, acquisition, being the use of AI, being a privacy focused, all those things I really want Mexicans to see and realize, whoa, these people are for real, not like many of the scandals that reach even Mexico, like certain company raised lots of billions, millions, whatever it is, and then they go broke because they mismanaged it. No, I want people to see that we Bitcoiners are built different.
Mm-hmm. We not only, because I can say this about the things that I'm involved in and that I've also observed, but we not only care about Bitcoin, the community, and its focus, but really serving and helping others. And I can see that very clearly with the two of you and what you're building in Yopaki. Just a reminder to our listeners, if you're not watching on the screen, their website is yopaki.com, YOPAKI.com. Gentlemen, last words, and then I have one quick question for each of you. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just feel really grateful for the opportunity to be on the show. But again, just the support from the Bitcoin community,
Carlos, do you have anything?
Well, given that this is the Boomer Show, an encouragement to boomers, I'm not going to go against your gut feeling. You know much better in many aspects of life. Better than me, of course, better than most of us at my age. But let me tell you this, Bitcoin is something completely different. When I'm explaining Bitcoin to my parents, I feel like when a priest that I respected was explaining me how God loved us. It was like, I don't get it. I feel like that now. So my message and my recommendation is like, do your own research, of course. Read as much as you feel comfortable reading. Ask all the questions that you should ask. There are not dumb questions. We all started knowing nothing. 10 years ago, no one knew anything about this. But if you feel comfortable allocating coffee money, party money onto Bitcoin, let someone take the driver's seat with that amount that you feel comfortable, and you'll eventually start to get it. And if you believe that at the end it's not worth your time, it's fine. You didn't lose much, but believe me, there is so much that you can win.
Terrific. Okay, this is going to be real short and sweet. Ready? What is your favorite Loteria card? Quick, go, Francisco.
The anonymous.
Carlos?
Mine, this one, the one that I'm wearing, the bit signal.
I like that. That's the Bitcoin shot of the Bitcoin being projected on the bank last year at the first block party. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a real pleasure seeing you and hearing a little bit more about Yopaki and sharing that with the Bitcoin Boomer Show. We'll be back in just a moment.
Teresa.
Thank you so much. My name's Teresa, and I'm sitting in for Gary Leland. Hi, thank you so much for listening to us today on the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm Teresa Martin, sitting in for Gary Leland. Just a couple of reminders before you head out. Remember, BitBlock Boom is coming up very fast in April. It'll be the 3rd through the 6th, and we've just added a new event. So you need to go to the website, bitblockboom.com, and you'll see that new event is a golf classic. It's the first time we've had golf associated with BitBlock Boom, and I am sure that's going to sell out very quickly. So be sure, go and check out the website, look at the schedule for all the other events that will be included April 3rd through the 6th, 2025. bitblockboom.com. In addition, I should remind you about the satscardshop.com. This is where you can get your Sats cards and make it easier to get around with your Bitcoin. Also, Bitcoin and the American Dream. This is Gary's book. It is something that he wrote last year in collaboration with a couple other Bitcoiners, and co-authored, I should say. But it is well worth your picking up. It's a very short, easy read, but it's pithy, and you can share it with others as well. So pick up an extra copy. That's bitblockboom.com/books. Lastly, I want to remind you about Gary's monthly, weekly, it depends on if it's a coffee or a barbecue meetup, but he does have BitBlock Boom meetups, and you'll find those at meetup.com/BitBlockBoom. We hope that you'll check out those things and get more involved and meet more of us, hang out at BitBlock Boom, learn about Bitcoin. That's what this show is all about. Not just for boomers, but anyone who wants to learn more about Bitcoin. I'm Teresa. I've been sitting in, and my business is helping people grow their businesses, launch their businesses, or make adjustments and improvements. My business is Flipcat Consulting, and I advise on a range of areas from marketing to operations. And I've also co-founded the Bitcoin Editors, and you'll find that at thebitcoineditors.com. If you are interested in writing about a topic and you're a Bitcoiner, you can write on anything, and we'd love to help you finesse that and improve your writing for a good product and a good book. So thank you again. It's been my pleasure to sit in for Gary today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Again, my name is Teresa. You can find me at flipcatconsulting.com. Thanks. We'll see you next time.